Tim Cain, job interview questions. As I mentioned, and for YouTube, that I just started the recording, so I'm gonna be having to interview people. All of the people we plan to have a Microraptor, I'm gonna have to interview them, and I have only interviewed a couple people before. I don't really know the best questions to ask. I kind of just play it by ear, but maybe there's some that I really should ask and make sure that we're getting the right person for the right job, and especially for the culture, the company culture we plan to have. Let's jump in.
Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
And today I want to talk about job interview questions. I did a video called Interview Questions. I'll link it below. But that was about press interview questions.
Okay.
A lot of people assumed it was going to be about job interviews and asked for this video. So let me talk about questions I like to ask in job interviews and questions I've been asked and just job interviews in general.
What are your greatest strengths and weaknesses? Actually, what do you guys think are the most enjoyable questions? I remember there was one that I really enjoyed being asked, which was, how can I piss you off? Like, what does it take for me to piss you off? I enjoyed being asked that a lot, and I enjoyed answering it. And I think that can reveal a lot about somebody's personality and what their goal is with game dev, right? I think you can tell somebody's passion for game dev if you ask them, how can I piss you off? Or at least it's a great way to know, where is this person's line, right? What is it that they think is the most important part of their job, that if that goes wrong, then it's over for them, right? I like the wobbly chair question. I'm turning that sucker over and asking for a screwdriver. What's the wobbly chair question? In Chess Club, I learned a lot about making progressively more money, selling progressively worse games. Yeah, that happens, doesn't it? Good question. Yeah, I don't know what I would... I think I would for sure ask that to other people. Like, how can I piss you off? A common one when you're interviewing for game design, too, is, tell me something that you designed wrong in, like, your previous games. And that's a really good way to tell if people are humble and if they can reflect on their past mistakes. But Wobbly has a chair for you to sit in, and you were supposed to ask for another one. So it's not a question, but they will like put you in that chair, and you're supposed to ask for another one. I don't think I would do that. I don't know. It depends on how wobbly if it was like wobbly to the point that this is about to break, I might mention it like, ooh, maybe, is there like a different thing, or do you have a screwdriver around that I could fix? Why would I care about a wobbly chair? It's kind of disrespectful. Yeah, it's to me, if it was a little wobbly, I wouldn't care. If it was a little squeaky, I would just try not to squeak it. But if it was like literally like, oh, I'm about to fall over, then I probably would mention it. My thoughts would be they can't even afford normal office equipment. Oh, lazy fangs, you're not getting hired. You don't even need it. You get promoted every like 3 months, make a shit ton of money, and you just have less responsibility each time. Fucking furries, man.
So, I've been involved in many job interviews on both sides of the table. When I go to job interviews now where I'm hiring someone, I assume people there are going to ask design and code questions for them to work through.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I don't interview artists, so you don't want a colorblind ex-programmer talking about art.
Yeah, I don't know
have
how
my
to
own
interview
questions,
artists.
and I'll mention a few of them.
I actually think that because we would have to hire artists, what I might do is try to find an artist friend who can join me on the interview and help me, with those questions. Because I don't want to just hire a 3D artist and, especially like for a lead position, and just assume that they know what they're talking about, right? So I'd probably just find a friend who I trusted who was an artist and say, hey, can you help me with this interview? I would fall from the wobbly chair and soothe them. Give them a sheet of paper and tell them to identify all the colors. It's like, oh, you can't see any, but they're right there though. You need to like look, it's very obvious the colors here.
Here, for example,
Or just like show them different crayon colors. Like with crayons. Just show them like a whole bunch of crayons, but you take all the wrappers off and say, okay, I need you to properly name the colors here. Identify all the colors here exactly in name. Exact hex color, right? Can get point as our scam artist lawyer.
I've asked people, imagine we're making a single player fantasy RPG. Design a crafting system for me.
Okay.
Very high level. Explain to me how it works. I just like to have them walk through, and then I'll ask questions of where do the recipes come from? Where do the crafting ingredients come from? Are recipes level based? Pros and cons. Basically, I don't care about the system they're making. I care about them talking
Yep.
about this.
Because game design is about communication, not about having good ideas. And asking somebody to design a system in the matter of 10 minutes, guess what? They're not going to create the greatest system in the world. It's not about that. It's about how you communicate that, right? No game designer is expected to come up with some perfect system in 10 minutes, especially high level, right? Honestly, sometimes I take weeks to think of the high level for a system before I even start writing anything on a design document. Because I want to make sure that I run it through over and over and over and over in my head. I ask other people what they think, and we refine it until I'm ready to go, okay, time to actually start writing this and blueprinting it. Because if you fuck up your high level for game design, I promise you, it's only going to get worse in low level. If your high level is really trimmed and it feels perfect, it feels great, you might still have problems low level, but you'll have fewer problems and easier problems to deal with in the high level. Some designers just take weeks just to make a puddle of water look good. Fuck you. Yeah, give me a break, come on.
The system they're making. If I ask someone a disadvantage of their system and they can't think of one, I get suspect. I've asked people to design a classless MMORPG. Basically describe how you would make that, what the pros and cons of not having a class would be in an MMO.
Easy. I play old school RuneScape so much. It's like classless MMORPG. Works well. I just say, okay, well, I don't know of any games like this, but and then I just go on to exactly explain old school RuneScape. Man, it would be great if an MMORPG existed like that, wouldn't it? Oh, old school RuneScape. Oh yeah, that would be a great one. Okay. It explains Skyrim, but it has to be an MMORPG, I think he said. Or I don't know if he said MMO or...
What the pros and MMORPG.
Yeah, MMO.
Basically describe how you would make that.
There's similarities, though.
What the pros and cons of not having a class would be in an MMO.
It is very similar principle,
Again, off the top of my head, I can think of several strong cons of a classless MMO. If they can't even tell me one of those or demonstrate that their classless system doesn't suffer from it, again, suspect.
I mean, and that kind of plays into exactly what what we talk about here, which is if you are a junior designer, you need to be one of the first people to say bad things. You need to identify the red flags in your design before anyone else, because the sooner that you spot them, the sooner you can prevent the coders from finding it when they're trying to make the system, or if anything, just the players. You want to spot those problems right then and there, not later down the line. Analyze it. That's why think before you write. Think about the system, talk with other people, because they'll spot problems with it too, either with implementation or with the idea. You need to do that. Pros and cons depend on literally everything else. You can't design one system in a vacuum, but you can say, well, if we have this system, we need to make sure that we do this. Otherwise, this problem will occur, right? And a good designer can go down that ladder a bit. Obviously, you go down the ladder completely when you start developing the low-level design, but when you're thinking of the high level, you need to be able to think, okay, we're going to have this system, which means we need to have this instead, and not lock players out of us, receiving this content. Or let's just say, well, we have skills and a classes system, which means that players can wear any armor and have any, weapons they want. So we need to make sure that the player isn't being locked out of things too often, because then that directly contradicts the classless system of being able to wear and use anything that you can in any combination. Or that we, maybe not providing set bonuses too often, because then that can kind of pigeonhole people into playing with set items and having a good gear set, rather than mix and matching in order to obtain a good variety. Because if you create a classes system, but you have really strong sets of armor that you need to wear all the sets to obtain the effects, you may as well just be making a class system, but now the classes take the form of armor sets.
I've asked people to I've asked people who've said they've played WoW, who've listed WoW as a favorite game of theirs, to make a quest or a solo instance that teaches a class. And I said, pick a class. Pick any class you want. Pick a class you're
I don't know
familiar
WoW.
with. Druid, warrior, warlock. Imagine somewhere between level 1 and 10, you want to teach them about something, some class ability they're going to get, a spell, something. Show me a quest or quest series or solo dungeon instance that will teach how to use that class. For code, I don't like puzzle codes. I prefer to give one that just shows me how people think. A classic one we've used is just on the whiteboard.
What are like puzzle codes? So, I'm not a programmer, so I've never done a programming test. Is it just like a trick question or something, which doesn't ever really occur in the average, programming experience? I'd rather, for me, I'd rather have a programmer that has good documentation skills, good, coding ethics, and can work with others well. Because I think that you might have a case similar with designers that you don't want to get a coder that is just like a lone wolf. List all odd numbers from 1 to 100 with Python. Write 10 sorting algorithms on a sheet of paper. It's like, do this without Googling. It's like, okay, but when I'm working at your company, I'm going to have full access to Google, right? Yeah. And all of your other coders probably use Google quite often to solve coding problems. Yeah. And I'm supposed to do it for your interview without all these benefits. Why? Why? What is this testing me on?
Do pseudocode for reversing words in a sentence. So if I give you the sentence, hello there world, you'd give me world there hello. I just like seeing how they walk through that code.
Okay.
And I'm often
Yeah, that's kind of cool. And it's such a simple. It's more like he's asking the coder in this case to create a function that you would have probably be used multiple times throughout the rest of the code, right? It's not like some specific case. It's more how do you create this function to do something that sounds relatively simple on paper, but maybe a bit, you need a bit of thought to put it through, right? So for me, I would have, if there was hello there world, I would break things into I would break things into an array based on the space, and then I would get all the indices, and I would have a reverse array run through and print out each word with putting a space in between, except for the last index, right? That's how I would do it. I don't know if that's the proper way to do it, but that's how I would do it. You had a good code test for Nokia? You can mention it, Gutsberg, if you can. Guess they should check for basic things at least to see if you can actually code instead of copy paste and pray. I agree. Depends on language. That's true.
and ask them, speak aloud as you're doing it. I want to know what you're thinking. Now, I know people who hate these, who say doing stuff on a whiteboard in front of a bunch of people is not the same as doing your work. And I get that. But at some point, I need people to show me.
I kind of disagree. Because when you're doing like code review or you're doing certain code reviewing processes, like sitting down with a more experienced programmer and going through your code together, that is pretty much the same thing. Unless
that
I'm
they
wrong.
can do the work. You need to show me. And you can't just come in with a lot of demos or list on your resume of things you've worked on, because I've had a lot of people lie about those. My worst case was at Interplay. I went to hire a programmer who literally lied through his teeth about stuff he had worked on. We then hired him on the basis of a recommendation I gave in the interview, and he couldn't do any of the things he said he could do. And that was a nightmare. He was the bane of my existence for the last several years at Interplay, because I'd see this guy trying to do things who didn't know even the most basic math. Watching this man try to rotate a sprite, And he didn't know anything about rotations, rotational formulas. He didn't even know what sine and cosine was.
That's me when I'm trying to do math-based coding. Okay, and this would be Tim's face when he watches me do math and blueprints. That's why I'm not a programmer. That's why I am a designer with a, programming knowledge. I'm just not great with knowing different things about math, but I still try it. I learn, I get better and better, but I'm just not, I don't feel as naturally gifted or at least experienced in doing math-based coding, especially with physics. That's my crutch, right? That's my issue. AKA useless. I'm useless for that. But that's why I design games. The idea was they gave 2 to 3 code snippets and asked one question per code snippet how to make it better using newer code standard, how it will work, now what is output, but analyze it, and at least one was fix it. An idea was you were sitting with other C++ devs and analyze it on the fly and out loud. That's kind of cool. I mean, rotating a sprite would be really easy. I don't see an issue with that. And the thing is, he applied for this. He had experience. I think at a point where I was doing math-based coding, if I spend like 2 to 3 years just doing math-based, coding like this, I could get better at it. But I just don't do it that often because I'm making systems, and so for me, it's not often that I have to jump into the math. And sometimes I can do really complex things. Boom, 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 boom. Blueprint's done. And other times I'm sitting there with like the easiest math possible, and I'm wasting hours because it's not translating in my brain of what I want to accomplish, or I don't know how to word it mathematically of how I want to accomplish it. And I think not knowing the mathematical terms is really the issue with me. It's not knowing it's not the issue of not knowing how to do it, but not knowing the mathematical terms of how I want it to how I want to accomplish it, right? We're just evaluating how you think and if you can understand it, not if you're right or wrong. Yeah, because it's like you have a team of coders, right? So it's not like every coder is supposed to be or should be expected to magically be the best coder in existence, but that if you do get stuck, you kind of know the process and you can say, okay, I'm stuck here. I'm going to go ask my team, right? Or I'm going to go ask my lead and see what they say. It's a team exercise. And I think that more tests need to encourage that. And for me, if I were hiring a designer, maybe I would say, okay, let's first off come to me with an idea for the system. Spend the next 5 minutes with this piece of paper, write down your system, or just tell me the system off the top of your head. And I want to see how well you work with me. And if you know terms, if I start singing out programmer terms or artist terms, can we go tit for tat in the same room? Or if there's something you don't understand, can you ask it? Do you have the ability to mention, hey, what do you mean by that? And we can talk and design a good system back and forth over the next 10 or 15 minutes. And if we can do that, you're a good designer in my head, because you know what you're talking about, but even better, you know how to work with me and we can flow well. And a lot of designers, if you don't flow well as a designer, it's not going to work out in the long run. Way different now than with internets and LM. A smart individual can just sit down and figure it out. Back in the day, you actually had to know it. It's true. Like after interview, just one question: what is juxtaposition gratification? I think I might ask. That would be pretty funny if I asked another designer. If I said the term juxtaposition gratification, what comes to your mind? Just anything. And if they like start to try to explain it and not just be like, what the fuck does that mean? I'd be like, nope. Don't you try to explain it. Don't you even dare. Get out of this room. I don't want someone on my team that just makes up bullshit terms and confuses every developer in this company.
Wow.
It's hyperbole a bit.
Now, I've been on that end too. I interviewed at Valve in 2011, and I was giving code and design tests, which was odd because I told them when I came up there I was interviewing as a designer, and they said sure, and the very first thing they asked me was a code test. I flubbed it. Of course I flubbed it. I hadn't coded in years, and I flubbed it really badly. It was a question about making the code to run a control panel for an elevator. I was about halfway through writing down on the whiteboard what I would do, and I realized I'd made a big mistake. I told them what the mistake was. I restarted, and then I ran out of time. And they said later they were rejecting me on the basis of the code work.
I don't like that. I don't like that. I mean, he got halfway through writing the code. He saw the mistake he made. It's not like he just kept going and then pushed it and was like, okay, well, if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, the testers will tell me. I think that happens to every programmer. You know, they start writing a function, they're like, yeah, that's not gonna work. Let me rewrite that. I think that happens to every programmer now and then. It's so I don't really get the issue. That's kind of fucked up. I think purely in a business perspective, it's like, well, you made a critical mistake and had to restart that cost company time. I mean, I get that. I agree, but I think it's kind of, I don't know. I mean, the whole thing was he was being hired for a design position and he was being given a code test, which is kind of weird. Like, if he was being hired for like a technical designer position, I guess I could understand that to some extent. But still, I don't know. I don't like that. I had one super bad code interview in game dev. Yeah, tell us about it. This is like the question: what do you think about the amounts of dihydrogen monoxide we have these days in the atmosphere? And people are like, oh, I think it's bad. The pollution, the climate. Oh, this stuff is bad. Yeah, I like clouds. Dihydrogen monoxide stuff is really funny to me.
The design tests I did, I was told I did really well on that. So I walked away confused because I showed up as a designer saying I wanted to be a designer at Valve and was told they don't hire designers, but they're going to interview me anyway. And then half my tests were code. Except lunch. Lunch was all business questions, and I didn't get to eat much. And the receptionist got mad because when I came back, she goes, "How much of your lunch did you eat?" And I said, "Well, I got asked a lot of questions." And she got mad. She said, "These guys do that all the time. They never let the people eat lunch." Anyway, it was an interesting experience, though, and I liked it. It gave me a sense of like, okay,
I
this
don't
is what.
like that. I think honestly, if I did an interview in person where it was like, okay, first we're gonna talk, we're gonna do the interview, then let's go grab some lunch together. The purpose for me for having the lunch with the person is to see how they do casually. Like, can they just talk with strangers casually? Like, how do they do as a part of communication and culture? Do they fit in around here, right? Because if somebody doesn't fit in, there's going to be problems down the line, and that's really hard to fix. So I wouldn't have a lunch with somebody, especially when you're hungry, right? You're not going to answer questions as well. So if you're hungry, it's just like, dude, we're not answering we're not talking interview questions here. Let's just talk about like games or something. Like, what are you playing? You know, what do you like about that? Keep it casual. None of this matters to the interview. We just want to see if you know how you are as a person. So many people have no idea when we're like answering something they realize that have no idea. Yeah, and the issue is that they think they know, but they don't mention it, and that's scary because then they're acting like they know something but they don't know. And it's okay if they say, "Well, I don't know exactly, but here's how I feel about it." You know, they're setting it up to say, "Well, I'm going to say something that I don't know if it's true or false, but I'm going to provide my answer to this based on what I currently understand about it." And that to me is more important because it's like, take this with a grain of salt. Here's my opinion.
What it's like. I hadn't been on that end of the table in 6 years. Although my hiring at Carbine were four different interviews.
I did 4 interviews for um was it 3 or was it 4? Wait, hold on. I did 3 interviews for what was it? Far From Home or Forever Skies. I appreciated that. So the number one was with I hope they don't mind me saying this. Number one was with producer, and that was more just a test. Hey, do you know what you're talking about? Do we sense that you are who you say you are and seem knowledgeable? Second one was with producer and CEO, and that was to see generally, you know, kind of going a bit deeper and for to have the CEO verify that, okay, he's passed this first test. Here's a second one. We're going to talk a bit more about the exact numbers and what you expect and how things work. And then the third one is an interview that was just with the team. It was just me sitting down with team members, an optional thing for the team members to come in and say, hey, here's somebody that we plan to hire. Just sit, just talk in a group chat and, uh, ask questions with each other. Just talk about games you like, about personal things. It doesn't matter. This is to see if you fit within the team. I loved that. I think that was great, and it was a great way for me to meet other team members and to ask them honestly, without the CEO, without other people around, hey, what do you think about the company? Do you have problems? Do you have things that you work on? And if they can open and honestly talk about problems that they have and how they fix them, which is one of the things I always ask when I'm seeing if I want to join a company, like, what's one of the biggest problems you've had recently as a team, and how did you overcome it? Because I want to see, can they sit down and talk about these things? Can they solve them? Do they have a transparent communication with each other? And if I can get the sense that they have that, that's a big green flag for me. So I really like that those 3 interviews were had in that way, especially the last one, where it was a way for me to meet the team and see if I fit in with these people. So son of the new guy is Antichrist, right? I was recruiting to USA-based company and had gone through CV part, interview with recruiter, interview with CEO, and they asked me to talk with programmer to evaluate skills. Jesus Christ, after all those other ones. I asked if this would be code tests like whiteboard tests. I got info that it will just be chat. It wasn't. It was C++ tests with screen sharing. I wasn't prepared and I didn't have C++ support on my IDE. I have Unreal support, but fstring not equal to std string. Yep. I was undergoing test at 9 p.m. after 8 to 9 hours of work. That's fucked up. I was prepared to talk about UE5 specific things, and it was UE5 specific job. That's dumb. That's really fucked up. I remember I was doing a design test for a company, and they asked me 3 questions, and they said keep it to 1 page for each answer. And they were at, one of the questions was like design this system, right? For something, I don't remember. And I kept it to 1 page. It was a lot to design a whole system and keep it to 1 page just for the high level. But I did that, and then I sent that, and they came back to me and was like, "You barely wrote anything." I'm like, "Yep." So so we're gonna deny you for the job. It's like, well, you told me to keep it to 1 page for each question. That's what I did. I followed the rules of the test. It's hard to write a whole system based on, I think it was like magic. For me, it was like a magic system in a RPG game. I was like, dude, this is a lot to write on 1 page, including the question in there. So I don't know. I got fucking frustrated at that. It's like they didn't even want to talk about it. They just told me to do it. Didn't like that it wasn't long enough, even though they told me not to make it too long. And yeah, I was like, dude, I don't want to work for a place like that. Fuck that.
With the people who founded Carbine, with the programmers, with the...
By the way, if the person who's out there that gave me that interview test, I just want you to know you were a huge dick, very disrespectful in the emails, and you acted like you were the god of game production. And guess what? Your company went under, and you lost your studio. So you know what? Maybe evaluate the way that you treat people. Got tasked to make turnaround strings to make from birth to fur, but I hate when somebody is watching my writing code, and I was tasked to do an SD string, and I haven't used for 3 years. Yeah, that's just kind of unnecessary pressure. I don't like being watched over my back when I do game design either, which is why it's kind of hard for me to do game design on this channel. Because sometimes I just need to sit and like stare at a wall for 2 hours. But that doesn't make good content, but I still have to do it. So there will be a time in the future where if I don't have somebody else to stream for me and stream on this channel, I'm just going to have to take like a day off to do design and come back to you the next day and tell you guys what happened, right? Still a company that were respectful and even wanted to hire me as junior due to bad code, but they wanted to find senior first. Yeah, it makes sense. One interview I that passed because I failed expectations positively. There was some kind of Excel validation and input stuff. I had difficulties understanding some of the question. We were in a room, 6 people, kind of trying to do our own thing ASAP. I was the only one that asked questions to the recruiter and clarified some errors in the text. Nice. Hey Slavical, Tim Cain, I love his videos, very insightful, just joined. Hey, nice to meet you. Yeah, we're halfway through his job interview questions and we kind of got sidetracked talking about bad job interviews we had, so. We're sharing bad job interviews. I don't know if you're a game dev, if you had a bad bad experience, but throw it in chat. We love to read it.
Producer, and then with a bunch of people from NCSoft, the parent company of Carbine. That was so 4 days of interviews.
4 days.
So I get it.
Wow.
Here's some other questions I like to ask people, though, no matter what position you're looking for.
Okay, this will be useful.
I go, what was the biggest team you've worked with? Because I want to know.
I've been asked that before, yeah.
As teams get bigger, dynamics change. If it's a small team, I will ask questions like, did you have to wear a lot of hats? If it's a big team, I will ask questions like, well, who did you answer to and who did you manage? And ask them questions about that flow of information. If they went to college, I may ask them what their favorite class was. And then ask them questions if I know that topic.
If they asked me, did you go to college? I didn't even graduate high school, so if you want to ask me what my favorite class was, you could also ask me what my least favorite classes were, the classes that I failed out of.
I had somebody who said he went to engineering school and his favorite class was thermodynamics. I asked him some questions about it.
That's cool.
I just want to know what people take away from what their experiences were. If they were self-taught, I usually say, what was the most fun topic that you had to learn on your own? And why was it fun for you to explore?
Most fun topics to teach yourself about game dev. Oh man, they're all pretty traumatic. I think blueprints. For me, blueprints, because I struggled with learning coding properly. Like I had tried it. I tried to work in C++. I made some progress, but it was still just kind of stumping me. And when I finally learned certain terms and how to accomplish things and like just make a system in Unreal work, it was so satisfying that I could actually code and do it in a way that worked for me, that I didn't get stuck writing some like function and how do I communicate between functions in different files. Because for me, when I was writing C++, I was like, I don't know how I communicate between separate CPP files. I don't understand how I do this. Like, where do I store variables? I don't know how to store variables. So I have a game that I want to make, but I don't know how to do it. TV is funny because I had 4 years of college, but I never clarified. I never graduated past year 1. It was stored in the balls. Man, it was for 1047 Games, a studio that made Splitgate. It's my first and only job interview for game dev. In short, I was showing him how I made my own version of GAS. Oh, the game's the gameability system. And he said, and I assume this isn't network replicated. And I was instantly agitated, but pushed through and finished the interview. I didn't get the job. Glad I didn't. Yeah, it was fucking weird stuff, man. They kind of, sometimes in job interviews, they act like if you haven't done it before, you will fail. You won't know how to do it now. It's like they give you no wiggle room to actually learn how to become a better person. And in a lot of these studios, you're kind of like, you're worked so hard, given no days for education or for growing, and you're never pushed outside of your box, that it's like you work for a place for 2 to 3 years, and it feels like when you come out of it, you don't actually know more than when you came in. I hate that. Ugh. When they ask what was the biggest C++ project you worked on, I always remember when we compared Nokia eNode B code sizes with Linux Core, and we had bigger one. Oh my god. Is that a common question to ask what the biggest C++ project you worked with is for coders?
If people really are self-taught, they usually have an answer right away for that. If they aren't, they'll struggle to think of something some topic they learned that was fun. And I'm not doing this to catch people up in lies. I'm doing it to deep dive into their experiences. But yes, that will occasionally call people out
Yeah, that's fair.
making stuff up.
I don't lie in interviews, so I may have problems with assuming that somebody else is also telling the truth. You know, I need to make sure that when I interview people, that I interview with somebody who is good at catching that, or who more consciously thinks about it than me. Because I take a lot of people at face value sometimes, because I am a face value person. If I don't like something, I tell it to you. I don't have time for lies when I'm doing my job. If something is shit, I say it's shit. If something is wrong, I say it's wrong, right? It wasn't a bad interview per se, but I didn't like how he just assumed I was too ignorant to make something replicate within UE's framework. Yeah, I can understand that. I got that question too. They were trying to gauge how I work with API documents in complex projects. A company of super big tech debt and ability to navigate big code base is useful, but most companies don't have big code bases. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I didn't think about that. You guys can help me when I interview for coders.
If you worked on a project or you gave
Coding test. I need you to make my game for me, okay? And if you can do that, you can work here.
demo or you worked on a class project, I'll pick that from your resume and say, what content in here were you responsible for? What did you design?
I get that a
What
lot,
did you
yeah.
code? What did you write? And then I'll ask them about that, their experience doing that, including what was the hardest problem you had to solve to do that feature, to add that content.
Yep.
Name something that was difficult to solve, but that you did solve, and talk about your solution. Or I'll say, did you manage anybody or did you take a lead role in any of these things? What was that like? What were some of the decisions that were hard to make? Or did you ever have to make a decision that your team disagreed with? And how did that end up after the project, demo, or class project was over? So
it assumes that we had a post-mortem. I know, I don't know if we didn't have a post-mortem for Darkest Dungeon. I just don't know if they had it without me, or if I assume that they just didn't do one because they were very experienced developers. But I probably would have liked that in hindsight. I know for one of the games that I made after that, there was a post-mortem, and I wasn't invited to it as the lead, even though I wasn't working there anymore. Sometimes you still bring in developers, or at least allow them to make a statement, right? Because it's supposed to help the team grow, to analyze what you did right and wrong. And I remember that the person who filled in for me was my superior, and he didn't design the game at all. And so he was just basically stating what they did that worked well for the player, but they never ever touched on the things that went wrong. It's like, how is it a post-mortem if you just talk about yourself and what you did well? Like, we need to analyze what went wrong in game design in this company and in this project, and there were a lot of problems that we had. It's very positive. No morale hits, right? Got to keep spirits up. Can't face problems because apparently we don't hire adults. We treat people like children. Fuck you. Let's do things positive, right? I don't know. I was pissed off because it's if you can't accurately identify what you did wrong, then how do you expect to get better?
I love
one of the reasons I left that company.
Like that because there were a growing number of people who did not want to be managed nor manage anyone. And once a team gets past about 10 or 15 people, that just goes away. So
well, you also, if you have like, you need somebody to manage, number one. And yeah, if you have people over a certain size, you absolutely need managers. And you can't just hire people that don't want to be in that position, right? You know, for instance, there are a lot of issues with ego, right? Where somebody who's been in a lead position can oftentimes feel like they never want to be in anything less than a lead position. So I know I've been asked that too. Like, I apply, even though I've been a lead game designer, I've been asked during interviews for regular design positions or senior design positions. You know, you were a lead before. How do you feel that this job isn't a lead position? I'm like, dude, I don't care. I don't care what you call me. I just want to work. Like, I don't care if there's somebody above me, somebody below me. If there's somebody below me, I'll help them. You know, I'll work with them. If there's somebody above me, I hope that they can teach me what they know. Just put me in the game, boss. You're pissed because you're a negative person with a lot of hate for games that are positive and have that fun factor in BioWare magic. One person doesn't care about ladders, right? Super important fact in any work. Yeah. I don't know. I don't like company hierarchies. And I know for Microraptor games, we won't have like that strict hierarchy. We still need somebody as a lead programmer because somebody needs to be responsible for maintaining that code architecture, right? And we still need somebody in the creative lead position like me who can make decisions at the end of the day when there might be cases where there is some disagreement about direction forward. But it's making decisions, but also being responsible. So, we need somebody like a lead artist because we need somebody to manage the outsourcing. We need somebody to delegate. But it isn't because they have necessarily more authority, or I guess authority is not the right word, but more experience doing everything art related or everything programming related. It's just if you have a problem and we have Jimmy over there in the corner who's done nothing but tech art for like the last 30 years, that's the person to talk to about tech art things. It doesn't mean he's always right, but it means when you are the person here who has the most knowledge, you're the person to talk to. You don't have to talk to your lead first unless it really matters. You don't have to get everyone involved. Just go talk to the person that can help solve your problem. You just don't need to be seniors. Yeah, you're correct. You don't need to be better than people below in that craft. They need to have super soft skills and have some understanding of this department. They need to be good at listening, delegating, and organizing. Those make the best leaders. And communicating. I can be your HR lady.
So unless you want to always work in small groups, you're going to have to figure out how to both manage people and how you like to be managed. Yep. And with most of them, I explained that when I'm a manager, I will meet you halfway with many things. Like if you really need a quiet office or your own office.
Yeah, sure.
Or
people have different working conditions.
When you're given your work, you don't want to be checked in on again until it's finished. I will try to meet you halfway on those. What I expect from employees, though, is they meet me halfway.
Yep.
That they go, I understand
it's a two-way street.
That I have this condition of employment.
Like quirk.
How can we meet it or meet most of it? I don't like when people go, they throw down a gauntlet and go, I must have my own windowed corner office and you can only speak to me on Friday afternoon. I'm like, okay, that person's gone. Because I understand people have restrictions on how they like to work, but a lot of those feel like ultimatums. And I know you don't want to hear an ultimatum from me. I don't want to hear an ultimatum from you. So, and I try not to do that when I'm interviewed. I don't go, well, I can only be lead. I like being senior programmer or senior designer. I like someone else making all the decisions. And I've worked both ways. In fact,
I'll tell you one of the greatest things. If you work on a game, you struggle and you're in a lead position, sometimes the greatest thing after that is to be in a senior position. Like, dude, I just need like 2 years. Just give me a break from making decisions. Tell me what to do. I'll do it. And let me build up some stamina for the next leadership position. Never been in US, but it sounds like your managers typically delegate all their main tasks to their secretary and try to find dumber things to do, like firing people over JavaScript. I haven't seen that. I've never seen that. It's not US specific problem, but it is common. I see managers earning 2 times developer salary, doing 0 work per day, and just do Excel that could be done in 1 to 2 hours. That happens everywhere too. I agree, leveraging the strengths of those around you is a sign of good manager leader, especially if it's a strength that covers one of your weaknesses. Yeah. Good managers' leads don't become prideful when someone else is better than them at something. Yeah, 100% agree. So pay for accountability, responsibility. They fire people under them. Yeah, look, I agree with Tim. One of the things that Cuthbert is, part of this Microraptor initiative, right? And one of the things that we developed before we even made our company name was what we stood for as a company, our values. And one of the things that I came up with was that we are adults making games. We should have fun, but at the end of the day, we need to treat each other like adults. That means being honest, being understanding, saying you need a day off for mental health, or you need to go pick up your kids. Go for it. No questions asked. Do it. We are hiring people that we know are passionate about games and want to make games. And if left to their own devices to try and solve a problem, we don't need to micromanage them. We don't need to look in on them every 2 hours. We know that they want to make games and they want to grow and become a better developer. And sometimes there's just going to be bad days for that, right? So, yeah, I agree with Tim. It's like, meet me halfway here. We're all trying to accomplish the same thing. We all stand for the same thing. Tell me what you need. I'll do my best to do it, but no ultimatums, like he says.
In fact, I've been lucky in that I've been able to go up the ladder and then consciously step back down for some games and then go back up. A lot of people tell me once they go up the ladder, you can't go back down.
That happens.
And then the Peter principle kicks in, where you find yourself in a position that you're not really competent in, and now you don't know where to go. One question that I love, love, love to ask people in interviews is, what hobby do you have that has directly influenced your work? And give me an example of it.
I play games. Tim, all I do is I go home and I play video games until I'm too tired and I have to sleep. Don't put me in this position, Tim. My hobby is gaming. I feel like I'd have to look outside the box for this. I mean, I don't know, maybe watching movies and TV shows. I love it. I love watching TV shows. Would you phrase a saying from martial arts? A fighter is one that knows his strengths. A warrior is someone who knows his strengths and his weak sides. A master is someone who turns his weak sides into strengths. Same as with managers. I like that saying. It's good to know the strong sides of the team, but managing the weak ones is really what makes the good managers stand out. I mean, I always talk like your employees are investments in your company. And if your investments aren't growing, your company isn't growing. So it's not hiring weak people or people that don't have as many skills as someone else is not making your company weaker. If they're good at learning and they're good at communicating and being part of a team, they will instantly get to a place in half a year to a year that is above even some seniors in other companies where they don't really promote this growth. So you need to create an environment and find people that are going to become the most competent individuals in your team by far by just giving them a little bit of freedom and leeway and managing them well. I saw game directors that had zero success rate after 3 to 4 projects, but you can't just hire one from market that have so much experience. Beautiful project is at least 6 to 8 years of experience as game director, so you just don't hold them accountable. Yeah, there's a lot of that in Poland we see. Where like directors, there's certain positions in game dev in Poland that are just so rare that they basically just get shunted around from place to place, but they're really bad at getting better. And so they just kind of like, yeah, they have all these years of experience, and then as actual teammates and individuals, they don't really do much. That's why by managing the weak sides and turning them into good ones, you can do a lot. Yeah. I have worked at places where I felt like I was just shunted into doing this one thing for so many years, and I didn't have enough freedom or time to grow and become better, that it just felt like I was doing my day job coming home and I wasn't really making much progress. You need to give people time to introspect, and you need to set aside company time to say, hey, we need to do this thing that may not contribute directly to the tasks that we have in our Jira or in our backlog. But by doing this for 1 hour, we will grow as a team, right? Like things like retrospectives. Yeah, for this hour, we may, or these 2 hours, we may be spending a lot of time and money combined as a team, not getting any tasks done. But by spending this time, we are all growing as individuals and as a team, that our tasks will now go faster than before. Do scrums fit in there? They should. I think that sometimes managers look at that if tasks aren't getting actively done, that the company isn't making progress, right? And it's one of the reasons why, as a company with game dev, you would want to set aside time for your team to play the game. Like, no. You are being paid to play the game.
Bullshit.
Hey, Slavical, thank you for the follow.
Bullshit.
This
Derivative. That I love. I absolutely love.
Like I'm saying, it's one of the reasons why, as a team, you want to set aside time to play your game, so that you're not telling people, oh, well, if you have time, go play the game, or if you have time at home. No. Home time is their time. Set aside time on like every Friday, every other Friday, play the game, write down things you like and don't like, pass it over to the creative director and the producer. They're going to go sort through it and then hand it out to leads at the start of Monday, or we can talk about the things during next retrospective, right? Find bugs, report them, and let's make the game actively better. Pay for it because you're making the product better. That's not something you should not pay for. Where's the YouTube short with this? Can I refollow to see it? You mean the clip, Cuthbert? I can send it to you. I think I have it somewhere. I have it somewhere. I'll send it to you.
I've had people who love to cook, who made a crafting system based on cooking. I've had people who like to hike, who that influenced how they designed levels.
Especially,
yeah.
I think I've talked about this before, but designers, the more you do in life, the more you expose yourself to, the better you'll get. Like, I watch a lot of documentaries about just random shit. Veritasium, Smarter Every Day, Mark Rober, even like stories, like horror stories of people getting trapped in caves, because oftentimes they have really interesting rescues that implement technology I didn't know existed. So just like expose yourself to as much as possible. Be a good person, go out into the world and expose yourself. That's what Microraptor recommends. If you are not exposing yourself in public, you're not being a good game developer.
Outdoor levels with sight lines and angles,
hey, buddy, Rob.
And how to make paths obvious. These are the kind of things I love hearing, because I love hearing that people have hobbies outside of work, but I also like hearing how they integrate that.
Yes.
It's nice to talk to someone who has a well-integrated life. And then finally, and this is sometimes controversial, although I don't understand why, I often ask people towards the end of the interview, why do you want to work for this company? What is it about this company that made you send in a resume?
Well, you pay money, but I get it. I get why he's asking that. It's probably I'm wrong, but I don't apply anymore to companies that I don't want to work for, and I wish more companies asked me why I specifically want to work for them, because that's one of the reasons that I pick your company. I understand that if you're a junior in the industry, this is a privilege that I get after having worked in the industry for like 10 years. Okay. So don't think that I don't understand your struggle. I've been there. Sometimes you have to apply for every single fucking job there is because you need it. And you don't have a choice. If you're going to get a job at a mobile game company that's fucking people over, that's a difficult decision to make. But sometimes you need the money. I get it. I'm not going to shit on you for that. But I do wish more companies asked me why I want to work for them. Because I specifically chose them because I could see myself working there and on their projects.
And I get it. Sometimes people honestly say, look, I just need work, and I sent my resume everywhere. But I love hearing something like, I'm super into story-based RPGs, and that's what you guys make. I'm a big fan of this game and this game. Or, I backed a Kickstarter of yours, and I loved following the development, and now I want to be part of something.
Well, they're either part of the target market, or they're just more passionate about what you're making. If I'm hiring, I mentioned before I worked in a simulator, and we hired people that didn't give a shit about simulation games. Well, guess what you get? You get a developer who is not part of the target market, so they don't know what players are expecting in a lot of cases, or they don't know how to create the fun in that type of game. And that's not great. That's not great. Sometimes you have to go with who you can hire, but I would rather prefer to hire people who, when they look at a game like Golden Chronicles, they say, I've always wanted to work on a game where that story matters. I love alchemy. I love the stylization and making cozy games. It doesn't matter if you're not big into alchemy, sure, but if you're like, I love cozy games, okay. I want you then to work really hard to make sure this game feel cozy. Or like, I love the idea that you can craft potions and use them in combat. I'm not really big on the NPCs, but the combat, yeah, that sounds so fucking awesome to me. Like, okay, you are going to work really closely with the combat designer. Yes, even though you're somebody that's maybe not too closely related to combat design, but you get to work with them heavily because I want you to make sure that we shape that correctly with this game. I love moaning balls and stones arranged that a certain angle spells out internet slang. You welcome to being a level designer and creating stupid things for us.
Like that. Because that shows interest in the company.
Yes.
And something more than just, I threw my resume in the pile, hope I come out on top. So, this isn't the most important question.
It's why I always read cover letters.
But
always.
I love hearing it.
100%.
And then, of course, there's the classic, I ask people at the end of the interview if they have any questions. And sometimes it's interesting to see what kind of questions they want to know. Like, some people ask about the development environment. Some people ask about benefits. Some people ask about promotional opportunities. I like all those questions, and they're valid questions. But it tells me a little bit about your priorities, if those are the things you're asking about. not in a negative way, but just if I hire someone whose first question about a company was promotional opportunities, I'm going to go, this person wants to eventually be the lead or director. That's fine. We're always looking for people like that, but I would love to know that in your interview.
For me, like I've mentioned, one of the questions I always ask is, I want to learn about the communication and the honesty within a company. I want to see if they actually work well as a team, or if this is a company that I'm going to come into and I'm going to instantly hate because they don't know how to fucking talk to each other. They don't know how to solve problems. And so I always ask questions like, what is a problem that you've had with the production that, you know, caused a rift? Or did you guys have an argument recently that you had to solve? And if they say, oh, we've never had any arguments, red flag. If they say, oh, we try not to cause any problems. If there's an argument, we try to talk about it in private. It's like, it's a bit of a red flag too. Okay, so you take everything behind closed doors instead of just acting like adults and talking about it, right? So, you know, that I try to suss out red flags of whether or not this is going to, like you said, development environment, whether or not I'm actually going to enjoy working here, and if they like having somebody with my personality, which is, yeah, hey, that problem with the game, that's kind of shit, and I hate it, so, you know, can we talk about fixing it? Usually with my design, right? I usually don't call other people's work shit, but I openly call my own work shit. Game studios are usually especially secretive. Their games are protected assets and their technology is in-house. And then they ask hires what they know about them, maybe to find out where the spy cameras are hidden. Yeah, there is that. We're not very secretive, though. We like to showcase all of it.
I think that's a lot of what I wanted to talk about. I hope this gave you some insight into questions I like to get to give during job interviews, and it makes a good sister video to that what kind of press interview questions I like to get. Anyway, hope you liked it.
Another great video by Tim Cain. I really enjoyed that one. We talked about that one for quite a while. If you guys want to watch that yourself or give him support, go do that. I think I put a / in that link. I don't know if it still works. I know it does. Okay. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching that on YouTube, and see you on the next one. Bye bye, YouTube.